of whether we can develop a new political class and the economy where there will be real competition without changing anything with the status of Ukrainian oligarch. You are in UCMC in the days when 2 years ago UCMC started its activity here, so you are the guests at our festivities, and we hope that the topic that we are discussing today will be considered here not last time today, and we will initiate the series of discussions. And we would like to thank you for being the first ones who in this center will be discussing this topic. Let us start. And as the moderator of that discussion, I will give the floor to my colleague, the Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor Galyna Zelenko. Please make some methodological background to what is oligarchy in Ukraine, what do other economies do to financial industrial groups. Microphone. I am from the Academy of Sciences, from the Institute of Political, Ethnic and National Studies. We have done the research, and that was about interaction between formal and informal political institutions. When we are talking about oligarchs, oligarchat, and oligarchization, what we have in post-Soviet countries is absolutely new phenomenon, which is not characteristic for other transition countries, because here we had the privatization of the state economy. Oligarchy is not just a political class, that's a phenomenon, which means there is a group of people who create political institutions which are non-formal, but because these non-formal institutions start dominating the formal ones, the constitution are depleted. And the constitution becomes like benchmark constitutionalism. We're playing according to the informal rules of games, which are called political practices. Why do we have this situation? The main reason for that is in voucher privatization, which was selected by our country, because voucher privatization leads to making economy oligarchic. Only Czech Republic went along that model, and also all post-Soviet republics. The second step that helped to make political and economic systems of oligarchical type, that was when we stepped away from parliamentary model of public administration, because parliamentary model provides for political competition. When in 1995 we signed the constitutional agreement, and then we passed the constitution in 1996 with dominating political institutions, the level of political competition went down. That was a mistake when in 1996 we gave these 3 the powers, the presidential decrees were equal to laws. I cannot show you all the graphs, but what happened then? The regulatory drafting was moved to the presidential administration, and 20 laws were passed a year, and there were 6,000 presidential decrees issued. The center of legislative drafting became the presidential administration. It was easier to create the infrastructure at the level of the laws.
От в нас складається така ситуація.
And we have the situation now. Do we have some more time?
От в нас зараз склалася ситуація, що
The situation is that in fact we have a fake state, oligarchy. I don't mean these specific people, but the phenomenon of oligarchy substitutes the functions of the state. And now, to change this situation is quite difficult, but possible. In Czech Republic, they did not have this oligarchization. They also followed the voucher type model of privatization, but the factor of the European Union played a positive role there. Now, when we are cooperating with the European Union, it is important for us to create new rules of game. And second, it is important that we move to parliamentary model. What's happening is bad from the first glance, talking about efficiency of the public administration, but what's happening is political competition. It's just happening the way it is happening because the people who are used to earn short money, they are now in the better position. So we're now in this situation. It is important to insist on institutionalization of the power. Now the law was signed on encouraging the development of civil society, but in our situation it is very important to institutionalize the power. Only then we will have a renewal. But as the Eastern and Central European countries demonstrate, this renewal takes long time. For us to get to the level of Poland, to the level of consolidated democracy, for that we need 3-4 electoral cycles, so we need to be patient.
Дякую, Галя.
Thank you, Galyna. It's optimistic. You believe that we could do something about it? And if I understood correctly, this phenomena is a problem. Am I right? Yes. Okay, I give the floor to Vladimir Dubrovskyi. Vladimir, maybe your speech should be of a methodological character. What is oligarchy and what are the consequences of this to Ukraine? And also, can it be overcome by institutionalization? Post-Soviet states were doomed to such ways of governance. And in political science, they call it social order with limited access. And it shows how the majority of countries live. And only several countries 100 years ago, they were able to build principally different type of governance with open access. And they have formal institutions, but they serve people. And if the access is limited, it shows that this is connected to some sort of a connection between power and, for example, that there was some honest state and business, and then they connected and fell ill. It is started from the roots, and the roots are Soviet civil servants, and they were turned into business and administrative groups that control resources. And maybe they will turn into business and production groups, and they will earn they earn on the administrative resources, and privatization was only one of the elements. Oligarchs, Medvedchuk, Bakai, they were before privatization. They were connected with selling oil and gas and metals, and they then, in the course of privatization, they took their ground, and the situation could be different if the state served people, as it was in Czech Republic. So the situation is not unique for Ukraine. It is like in the medieval ages, then barons rule, and they combined the agrarian sector, and they also were connected with power. And at that times, the privileges of these barons, they were formalized in formal institutions, and they were opposed by new entrepreneurs and traders who had limited access, and they were able to carry out some activities, but they didn't have the opportunity to be involved in agrarian business. And those first revolutions that were in European states, they were against these barons and these institutionalized privileges. And these privileges are not institutionalized here, and they are grounded in not obeying the laws, and the revolution has the same ground, the same character. It doesn't want to cancel the privileges of these barons. We don't have these barons officially. And we have to establish the norms, the laws for everyone, and the oligarchs, they cannot have this access to power. And our institutions also lose power, and the opposition begins for the power. It's very difficult for the president, for example, if he loses some power, he will be in the position of Yushchenko. He used Beloga in order to overcome the situation and to carry out his activities. And how to do it, in what way? In European countries, in the United States, robber barons, they were interested in establishing the power of law in the country because they had to live in that state and to preserve their capitals there. It doesn't work in the modern state because we have a Miami effect. When oligarchs are local and they are not interested in creating institutionalization, because they just go to Miami and bring their capital there. So the only hope is that among those people who have here in Ukraine some access to power and some capitals that allow them to take part in political life, those who do this voluntarily and who believe that they cannot be competitive in open access, and there are those who do this, and those who support reforms, support civil society, who introduced these reforms, and these will be the reforms that establish equal rights and equal responsibility. And so they are, those belong to the elite that belong to revolution, because the revolution is carried out by some part of elite forces. And revolution of 2004, thus they became responsible before the people, and they had to become politicians and made politicians of everyone else. But the revolution of dignity started from the grassroots level. People came in Maidan, and then oligarchs and politicians joined. And after revolution, each of them believed that they used the other party. And now they try to find who used whom. And what about... I like your speech. I didn't plan, but I want to... I know that our colleague have to leave, and I want to ask you. Vladimir told us, and we heard that, in fact, values of those who now build new state these values, they undermine the oligarchy. But this week I saw the interview of with a sociologist, and there it was said that the best people in Ukraine, these oligarchs, they just buy people. The best people who come to politics, they are bought. And how can we fight against this on institutional level? And do you agree with this wording of Galavacha, this sociologist? And how can we overcome this phenomena? Thank you. I don't agree completely, but you know that we should wait some time, maybe 5 years or so. As to the politics as a concentration of oligarch system, of course, everything comes from 1990s, when first big money came to politics. I mean, money from gas supply from Russia, and the Bakai and Lazarenko, Tymoshenko clans rose, and first votes they sold there for $20,000 now. Our senior colleagues remind about these times, and in Brussels we had discussions with our colleagues, and they told us that the votes cost more than before, more than after that. And the politics go by spiral, and in each stage they put money in the party, then this party goes to elections and use money to get some results for victory. They campaign and they buy votes, then they go to parliament, and then they start to work in the interests of the clan. But sometimes there are some exceptions. For example, Leshchenko, he went to power with the money of one oligarch, and then he came to power, and now he serves other oligarchs. He changes them often. So we can change it by introducing different laws, but there should a law on financing the parties, and this law will change the supply of money, and the politicians, they should have independent source of financing, and these funds should be provided by the state as it is done in European countries. And starting next half a year, our parties will get money from the budget, but it's not enough. We should lower the concentration of the funding in politics, and it can be done by the measures, first changing the election, and then half of the parliament will be financed by oligarchs and business circles, because the majoritarian, and in Chumak's case, it is the competition of wallets, and there were some districts where ideas won, but in other cases this was the case where money were used, and the quality of human material in majoritarian districts, the quality is lower than in individual districts. So there are some niches to put the money in, and we should remove this majoritarian system. So there were open and closed lists, and we also should forbid advertisement on TV. The experience shows that funds are used for buying TV time, and they buy some jeans and also some advertisement, and you remember those advertisements in all shows and TV series. We should prohibit this TV advertisements or limit them to 5 minutes to each party in each channel, about 2 or 3 minutes video for their campaign. And if we have 10 seconds video, so it is for zombieing and manipulation with the voters, and we have a minimum time, about 2 minutes. You cannot use this for manipulation, so we should forbid this TV ads, and to have or to limit this time, and to create some limitation. And these are technical things that answer many questions, because without it, as it shows, and it's shown by my experience, we can't globally solve the problem. Then deputies immunity. And there you should be the...
Sir?
You can be of a high quality, you can ignore everything, you will never be made responsible. There were just 4 cases, Agafonov, Lazarenko, Maseychuk, Kluyev, possibly a few others. That's all we had in our history. If there's immunity, if there will be no immunity, then the value of mandate will be depreciated. Without the immunity, the value of the mandate will be lower. It is impossible to defeat oligarchy if we do not make political activity just like regular activity, where there are no such values as immunity, huge funding, alternative sources of funding. Without that, we will not be able to resolve that problem. Election lists, yes, I said the first one is to change the election law. If we have majority, 3700 law is a shame. That was it covers the activities of only that parliament. What I saw in the transitional provisions, it's not there. Okay. Then this is not admissible. Very simple question, but it has to be asked to you as the first politician who has taken floor now. Please explain why do we need to limit the influence of oligarchs? Why? How you said, but explain why. Can you briefly explain it? Because there's not a single successful oligarchic state in the world. Because oligarchy, a priori, is the system which works in the interests of making rich not the whole of the society, but very narrow circle of people. Viktor Chumak. Microphone. I just wanted to end because Serhiy was the first one of politicians who said everything. We've been talking about that many times, and we have similar views on how we should move forward. If you give me the floor now, I need to leave shortly. Oligarchy, for me, I explain it very easily. That is the possibility to approve some formalized decisions according to non-formal mechanisms. There are state institutions, there are legislative instruments on how the decisions are to be made, but they are not working. They are substituted by informal decision-making. The decision is made somewhere beyond the state institutions, beyond the body which has the right and the power to pass this, to make this decision. And the result is that the politics becomes the instrument of lobby agreements, and the economy turns into monopolized financial industrial groups which work for certain groups of people who agree between themselves as to controlling different sectors of the economy. As to historic experience or historic period when it happened from 96 to 2004. That was the when Ukrainian oligarchy was born. I call it the state of the form of state administration, public administration. It's either kleptocratic oligarchy or oligarchic kleptocracy. You can argue whether oligarchy or kleptocracy are the priority, but it's these are two things together. That is the democracy which is based on informal decision-making and non-transparent distribution of power and funding. Oligarchy, why it is bad? Because it does not allow to develop individuals. Its task is to kill small and middle-class business so that there is no competition with those people who can change this system. What are the instruments that work in order to change it? I believe there are certain economic instruments, and people who are here, they are trying to implement these economic instruments to change the system, the tax, the control over repayment of VAT, change of pressure and regulation of financial institutions and business and other things. I believe a very serious instrument could be like 25% of participation of small and medium-sized level business participating in all public procurement. So basically, it should be fixed in legislation that 25%, those who participate in 10, that 25% of those are to be small and middle-sized business. And that's participation in public procurement and use of the public budget. Then Serhiy is right. And you cannot buy everyone. You can push people or pull people into oligarchic networks and politics. Someone will be offered money, someone will be offered glory, another one will be offered something else. You can buy by different means, and the motivation could be different, but the main thing is not to be caught up by this motivation if you decide to go into politics. I agree. What Serhiy was saying, these are primary steps, mandatory steps, which are to be made today. If the society doesn't talk about that, everything we do then will have no sense, because we do not change the rules of entering politics. We are looking for the exit, but we are not thinking about changing the entrance. We are looking for how to come out, but the exit is where the entrance is. We either have to change the rules of entering politics, how people get into politics. We said that the cabinet of ministers is bad. The bodies which are formed are the executive bodies. But who forms the executive bodies? Who has the biggest influence on forming the executive bodies? The legislative authorities, which is formed in the result of the honest, transparent elections, fair elections. Either we have to change these, in converted comma, honest and transparent elections. Well, the system is made of bricks, which are called individuals. They know how the system works, how it moves, and how it could be changed. Until we change it, we will be running around the circle. It's like the dog that never can catch his tail. So that's the first step to be made. Open list, regional preferences, we can argue about that. What should be the form? But I would say that today, if we learn that from the political point of view, you cannot push through the law on the open list, but we need to remove majoritarian part. That's the male swamp that is swallowing the country. I was elected as a majority part of members of parliament. Then the funding of the parties, and this moment requires a very serious consolidation of political parties. We don't have any political parties. If we say that we have Batькivщина, Samopomich, and we say that they are political parties, they are not political parties, because they don't have any internal political standards, procedures, competition, the procedures which would exist in normal parties. They don't have any transparent financing. These are the projects created for a certain objective. I'm not talking about the personality, but that's created for the objective. And the objective is that they are created, such projects are created for the elections, and they live as long as their leaders live in politics. Just look at Tymoshenko. She lives for 20 years as politician, and Batькivщина lives for 20 years. But Udar, with which I came politically, and Klitschko was finished and Udar finished. Instead of that, there's another political administrative project which is called Bloc of Petro Poroshenko. It's not the party. It exists for the objective. Can you say what is the ideology of the party? What are the internal procedures of this party? Sadovyi is trying to build some alternative opportunity. He called this project Samopomich, but because he doesn't want to enter the parliament. His objective is bigger. His objective is presidential elections. That's different strategy in politics. But that is another administrative project. Vita can say that. She knows, because internal procedures are such that she is the result of that internal party procedure. So either we are talking about the necessity of creating new parties, we are promoting the process, we are starting to create them from top or from the bottom. But the main thing is that they should have the normal internal procedures. We are saying that we need to limit the political advertisement, the billboards, the promotion, which show us the faces of so-called heroes, because our political fighting is fighting of Chip and Dale with Telepuziki. And your colleagues did not say, they said that there should be 3-4 electoral cycles. You said something, and maybe others will add, you say, at the level of a person who knows political practices well, so what would be the cycle? The first, the second, the third. I believe that the processes which are taking place, the crisis, these are very positive processes, because this means that the disease is coming out. We understand what are the reasons of the disease. We start talking about the reasons of the disease. For me, this is a great signal. To recover, we need 4 electoral cycles. It's like the second, the third cycle to change the paradigm of development of political parties, political projects. I believe that's the second or the third. If the elections take place today, God forbid, then the cycle will be delayed. They will take place according to old rules, and this will be bad. Elections for the country today is bad because they will take place according to the old rules. They will not renew anything. They will can the situation, the so-called elite that wants to get there, and they deteriorate the situation with majoritarian candidates. I'm sure in that, because now in the country which is falling down in economy, the majoritarians will be winning those who buy their constituencies. There will be no ideological victories like it was in 2012 in Kiev. The situation deteriorates. But if we delay this process and if we start imposing to the society, we need to impose to the society. We politicians will not be able to do that. Only the civil activists will be able, if they impose on the society absolutely different discourse, that we need to change the rules to change the situation in the country, then we have a chance. Whether we will waste it or not, the time will show. Thank you. Now, well, this imposing on the society is quite brave. Pavlo, could you please say, what do you believe? How long will our society live in this paradigm? Oligarchs, society, oligarchs are bad, oligarchs are good, the relations of oligarchs and the society. Could there be any other paradigm? What is your opinion on this situation? Thank you, Natalia. First of all, it's difficult to perceive this formula that the society is doomed. Doomed by who? By what? The society elects its way, and society shows that it elects its way. All we have now is what we wanted to have. What we don't have is what we did not want to have. Till the society wants, in its critical mass, to live according to European principles, what Vladimir calls the principles of open society or open access, society with open access, others call it open society. And then the society will live as it lives, but this is not the doom. It's not like we are doomed. We ourselves doomed ourselves.
What can we start to think in different paradigm? Not that we discussed today? Or should we overcome this problem if it is considered a problem? Oligarchy problem or not? If not, why? And if it is a problem, can you tell us about your opinion on that as an economist, as a former Minister of Economy? I think that the Ministry of Economy, I don't think that it relates to this discussion. It is a philosophical discussion. I believe that this discussion is philosophical. Look, oligarchy is a reality of the stage of development of many societies. In Ukraine, this is a reality, and it is specific as many other things that are in Ukraine, and other specific traits of any other society. Maybe it is more negative than positive now, because this is a specific of oligarchy. And there was opinion that there's no successful oligarch countries. But for me, for example, the South Korea is oligarchy, and there are several families that control the industrial groups, and we can call them like this, and this is a successful economy. Of course, this is not a vector for us, but as to economic development, this is a successful economy. And our oligarchy doesn't have the trace of South Korean economy, but what is the solution? There are some factors that influence for the system and those who act against the system. Now, these factors are mainly in balance, and that's why we have a situation like this for a long time. The factor that is against us and for oligarchy is the general poverty of the population. They are easy to buy during elections. And the factor that acts for us and in our favor, this is openness to the 21st century. Mainly, these are social media, because at this level of poverty, it's really a phenomenon to have such an openness, and this is unique. We are rather poor in order to be so open. And from the other side, we are too open to be corrupt, and the balance is really difficult, and these forces are balanced, and they balance each other. And I can't understand what is the added value of this discussion. We can speak, and people earn there, and we are in a parallel worlds with these people. And I don't know why we are speaking now, but if we are speaking, so we should add some value to this. And Serhiy he shows we should bring those things into light, those things that are negative in the system we are speaking about. And it will take a lot of time. If political power of the state will balance as it does now. Of course, they cannot be fully for the oligarchy, and from the other side, they are rooted in the system, and they cannot fight against oligarchs. That's why we are balancing in the state, all of us. One more thing, and then I will give the floor further as to added value to our discussion. And during the last months, we saw many things connected with such a term that appeared in the mass media and social media, and it is called oligarchic consensus. And as a citizen, I'm concerned that there is discourse, and other consensus is not discussed that can counteract this direction of discourse. And we can by our today's discussion, we can consider what can be the opposition of that discussion? And are there any forces, political, economic, that can be the providers of other consensus for the development of our country? And as to forces, you do a lot in the government in order to limit the influence of financial and production groups and on economy of Ukraine and also on processes. And do you believe you succeeded in this area, or maybe you have other assessment of your vision and mission in the government? Thank you very much for your question. Pasko, representative in the National Council of Reforms, and is a business initiative founder that is involved on deregulation, and also alumni associate member of foreign universities. And about the achievements, of course, we could do something. And Easy Business, as an initiative, we wrote a strategy for the regulation of economy of Ukraine that was adopted by the Cabinet of Ministries and National Council of Reforms. And the strategy envisages 3 stages. And the first stage, and we thank Pavlo, Sheremeta, with whom we started this work. And this initiative was started by invitation of Pavlo Sheremeta after revolution. We started with him, and we presented the strategy the week before he left. So, and then we started to realize the strategy. In the first block, there were 200 things that should have been done. So this is the list of things, such as the removal of monopolies of the companies, and also removal of corrupt structures, such as monopoly, geological monitoring. That was some sort of corruption scheme that was used by oligarchs. So these were 200 things that were priority. And then 110 were chosen from this list. And this half, it's maybe less than 10% of what should have been done. So this was the first stage of reform. So yes, answering your question, we succeeded in some things. This geological monitoring, these were 3 billion hryvnias that were transferred to the pockets of oligarchs, and it was about resources, and these money were distributed into the pockets of oligarchs, and these things are happening now. And commenting on the discussion we are having, let's first identify what is oligarchy. Of course, we understand this term, but we should deepen our knowledge of this. We have 2 Greek roots, oligos, this means several, and archos, it means power. So oligarchy is power of several. So this is a structure when the power belongs to a small group of people. And this is what oligarchy means. And whether it's good or bad, if we take the examples from history, we may see that there are several exceptions when the power belonged to several people. For example, South Korea, Singapore, these are examples. But in many other states, there's a situation if there are several people, they infringe the power, and the other part of population, they live not in a good situation, and that's why we should fight this system. What is happening in Ukraine? The euro, there's no oligarchy. The euro, we have institutions of democratic state. We have separation of power, parliament, we have president, and also we have separation of powers. We have all the instruments of a democratic society. But de facto, we have oligarchy because a small group of people, and we can name these people: Pinchuk, Akhmetov, Kolomoisky, Medvedchuk, So this is a small list of people. For the last 23 years, they used the limitations of our legal structure in order to rule the country to their own benefit. So what are the limitations, how to destroy the system? We should remove the faults of the system that is infringed by these people. So what are the flaws? First, institutional drawbacks mentioned by Serhiy when he spoke about parliament majoritarian closed lists and also immunity of deputies. So this is what leads to these faults. But the parliament is only a part of problem. And then executive power, the low salaries, and also appointment of people. They are loyal to the power and not professionals. So these are institutional drawbacks, and this is only a part of the work. And the other part is what should be done to reduce the attractiveness of the spy. The role of the state should be reduced in the economy, and in this way we will limit the influence of these people. We can reduce the number of when the pie is smaller, so there's less motivation to redistribute the pie by reducing taxes and state expenditures. We will reduce the possibility for these people to gain something, and also there should the state. They shouldn't have some portfolio of 300,000 enterprises. These enterprises are the source of corruption, and through these enterprises, oligarchs steal money, and the state shouldn't control the property. The state is the co-founder of each state, and it gets the taxes, and the state shouldn't own these enterprises. Managers should control these enterprises, and the state should get taxes. That's why, with small exception, we should get rid of state property. And the next one is deregulation. So this is the decrease in regulation in the economy by the state. So we should remove such obstacles as bribery, and these are things that should be done in order to overcome the oligarchy. We should remove the barriers, and we should decrease the involvement of oligarchs in the economy.
One question, please give a brief answer. What to do? What is your vision? You said clearly. The political science, in political science, it says that there should be the subject for changes to take place. Who will be pushing the process? Do you see these institutions and forces who can do what you have just mentioned? In fact, I believe that Ukraine is a unique state where the maturity of the nation goes ahead of the maturity of elite. Two revolutions have proven that, and the people is the subject. And that is when the people have achieved their goal during the Revolution of Dignity, but till now the battle is not over. The civil society is still strong, and via civil society institutions, via social networks, while media, the people is the subject, and it can restructure the system. I would appeal to that subject, the civil society, you mean, yes. I would like to remind that about a month ago, We had a group of people that made an attempt to create another subject. And how are they called? Ukrainian Business Initiative. Large and businessmen got united. They said that they are ready to pay taxes and they're ready not to influence the politics by non-institutional instruments. First of all, that is not the attempt to become the subject, but the attempt to change the system and the approach that exists in the country. I call it the public agreement, in my understanding. Oligarchy is bad not just as the system, but people, they were not active, they did not participate in organization of the new post-Soviet system. They gave it away to the nomenclatura. But we need to think about what to do to change it. The biggest problem of oligarch, it's not just big business, but it's the biggest problem is not that it is a big business, but that there's no competition. There's no political competition. When influencing media and politicians, non-competitive things are happening, and then competition in business. These are the rules of game that we have. We are saying that, well, let's live differently, but the judge of the match does something different. Serhiy and Denis are saying that we are fighting the symptoms of the disease. We are trying to restrict. That is what is needed, but it is important to change rules of game. The business should try to give the signal that business is ready to change. For the system to change, the public agreement is to change.
Договор был о том, что каждый бизнесмен мечтает стать олигархом. Почему? Потому что это будет способ получить больше прибыли и быть более...
Every businessman wants to become an oligarch to be competitive. That was the system. You are buying media, you are financing some political party, better to finance several political parties, and then you improve your position in the market. So that another business doesn't eat you up. To change it, for that we need to have the public agreement of a different type. The businessman, big businessman, large businessman, first of all should take care of creating jobs and should pay taxes. He should create jobs and pay taxes, but he is sure that the taxes go to infrastructure, to economy. They're not stolen. And then this triangular is a closed triangular. The businessman pays taxes, the state comes to power and distributes the taxes efficiently, and people, society, become the main beneficiary of the system. The jobs are created and the taxes are distributed correctly. And then we have the win-win strategy. In this initiative, you have to start from yourself. I'm pleased that large businessmen, even though the situation is that in this country it is difficult to talk about super successful oligarchs,
кризис, возможно, даже поможет это трансформировать саму систему. Но
but large business understands already that they are partially responsible for the country, for the society. This is a pleasant signal. The signal is to be heard, and the initiative that large business, medium-sized business declares that they pay taxes honestly and they don't participate non-publicly in the politics. This is the model when it's not just the society that wants to live differently, but business as well. They think about the responsibility.
Игорь, спасибо.
Thank you, Igor. Andriy, same questions. Can alternative agenda be created for oligarchic consensus? If yes, then who are the subjects? If we heard it correctly from Igor, then business, society, and state. What do you think about that? I believe that the format is somewhat different than what we've heard, and I would like to first say why oligarchy is bad. It can be explained briefly. When the power is concentrated in the hands of several people, they are interested in preserving the status quo. And that results in the lack of competition, the companies become non-efficient, and the country is poorer. And that is what Mr. Sheremeta said. But there are people who are interested in preserving the status quo, and there should be some external factor that would change it. Public agreement is, as I understand, is somewhat different. You cannot put it on paper, the theory of public agreement, but business initiatives, in business initiative there was an attempt to sign it. Part of the problem is that the society, despite this leap, does not really want to see any radical changes. Two simple examples. We all agree here that the restricted access to resource, to state property, feeds the system, but I do not see any support from the population to privatization. Most people will say that we do not support privatization. Another example. If most people, like 80%, believe that we do have corruption in the country and that this is the big problem, but most people believe that low salaries of civil servants and MPs, that's something normal. And even the directors of state companies should receive low salaries. Most people believe that high salaries is bad. This should be changed. The civil society should play an active role here. Another important factor, which is important, is external pressure. And voluntary initiatives. the elite should understand that this is the issue of survival. And if they understand that this is the issue of survival, then it is possible that they will agree to some changes. Is that it? Yes, Victoria. You as the only MP who's left here, tell us, please. Could there be different agenda besides oligarchic consensus? Who are the subjects? And what is done in this direction? I have the honor to finish this discussion, and I would like to talk about some practical methods. First of all, to answer the question whether this is bad to have an oligarchic class in this society, I believe. And this is quite a rhetoric question, because it's obvious that it's bad to use administrative resource for enrichment of yourself. That is about oligarchy. I believe that the most efficient instrument to prevent it, which could help the economy to develop, is competition that exists in different countries. We have anti-monopoly committee in our country, which unfortunately for many, many years was doing not what they had to be doing. They were not helping the development of competition in the country. The anti-monopoly committee was giving permits for concentration to some businesses, and now we have what we have. The markets were monopolized, and in the activity, anti-monopoly committee was saying that they were investigating the cases on unfair competition. They were comparing whether the labeling which is on the good really talks about what this good is. But we needed to look at the companies which, because of cartel agreements, led to economy becoming not competitive. How were these instruments used by so-called oligarchs? I can give you some examples. If you take the market of air transportation in 2014, there was an attempt to introduce giving permits for charter flights only to those companies where the citizens of Ukraine is the owner of the company. I believe that that was a discrimination, because these rules were introduced not in order not to violate the security rules, but they were written for some specific people. I asked the question to the former head of anti-monopoly committee, will you be working on this case? The state authority is exercising some anti-competition actions. And the former head of anti-monopoly committee said that we were looking at the situation, we do not see any discrimination, and let our Ukrainian producer develop. It would be better than if Lufthansa comes to our market. And then I realized that Anti-Monopoly Committee is doing not what they should be doing. Also, last year there was a statement of the former head of Anti-Monopoly Committee on energy market. Mr. Baras, the former head, was saying that the situation with DTEC is not as simple as it looks like, and that it's not obvious that there is some monopoly in the energy market. He stated that since 1995, the Anti-Monopoly Committee was creating the competition model in the energy market, and for 10 years they were creating this model. My question is, maybe they did not act efficiently enough. For 10 years they were building it, and we received the situation that we received. And last year, the new Anti-Monopoly Committee started its work. They did some research. I don't know what will be the result of that, but in their report they say that such companies ДП «Енергоринок» they has the monopoly position in the market. They have 100% share. And in their report, Anti-Monopoly Committee in the end of the last year said that Energoatom, Укргідроенерго, and DTEC Східенерго, DTEC Західенерго, DTEC Дніпроенерго, Wind Power, Donetsk Obленерго, Kyivенерго, that's the united subject. All of them have monopoly dominating position in the market. So what should be the result of this case? I believe that Anti-Monopoly Committee should say whether these companies abused of their monopoly position, may be imposing non-correct behavior, and if there was some abuse, then Anti-Monopoly Committee should stop this violation and also impose fines. Penalty sanctions are quite high, and the fine for abuse of monopoly position is up to 10% of the annual turnover of the company, to say nothing about filling in the budget. But when Anti-Monopoly Committee at least once would investigate such case, and if they would impose some fines or penalties, if they force the subjects to stop violations, then I believe that would lead to those people who are behind these companies, they would start behaving differently. Also, how these companies getting larger, how oligarchs were able to receive this strong market power. That's within the competence of Anti-Monopoly Committee. It's the only body which allows concentration. When some businessman wants to concentrate, when he buys a company, and if that could lead to violating the competition in the market, that is the competence of Anti-Monopoly Committee. Unfortunately, for many years, Anti-Monopoly Committee was considering these cases of the subjects of the companies which whose concentration wouldn't influence the market. But at the same time, they would give permits for concentration and creation of large monopolies. You can define market differently. You can define that the market is small and this company has 100% share. You can say that the market is huge. Besides coal, it has some other goods. The market is not this small but that big. And we have many other companies besides this monopolist. What needs to be done to avoid that? The activity of the Anti-Monopoly Committee should be transparent. For that, we passed the law on publication of all the decisions of Anti-Monopoly Committee. And today I've seen that this law becomes effective today. Just publish all your decisions. There's nothing extraordinary there. But last year, when Anti-Monopoly Committee was headed by Mr. Barash, a year ago he came to our committee and he said that we are not supporting this law. We are not supporting the idea of publishing all the decisions. He was saying that they have no resources to read all these decisions before they are published. I hope that this initiative becomes effective, and now all concentrations will be on the website of Anti-Monopoly Committee, and we will see who's the final beneficiary of all these companies. This way, the civil society will be able to exercise its control. Also, the Anti-Monopoly Committee should be independent. It cannot happen that someone calls and tells them how to act in this or that case. And the independent status should be de jure as well. Because today there were attempts the Anti-Monopoly Committee should not be under the Cabinet of Ministers because it will lose its independence. I believe if this institution is reformed correctly, if it acts transparently, if we introduce some other rules, all that will help. The committee will be developing competition, and if our markets are pro-competitive, then the influence of oligarchs will be not as strong as it is today.
Thank you, Viktoriya. We got answers about the entities, and maybe it should be an anti-monopoly committee, and it's a joke. We all understand that anti-monopoly committee is not a separate branch of power that takes good decisions and limits some monopolies in the markets. It should work together with judiciary system, and there are some questions to the system. And also it should work with the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. And a lot depends on its activity in the country. The issue of the entity is open. A comment. This body should be independent, and it should start the cases on infringement of monopoly laws, and it should be proactive in what it sees in the documents. There are a lot of there's a lot of information it can get from the economic entities, and if the committee sees that some actions connected with corruption, it should give these cases to the bodies that investigate corruption cases. And we can introduce it in the future. Thank you. So this is the end of our round table. I won't take much time. I think that for me, the main idea was expressed by Mr. Sheremeta. He said that we gathered here to discuss, and the understanding, the level of understanding of this issue, and if we are not satisfied with the agenda that exists in oligarch consensus, then we should understand the level of discussion, and then we should think what should we do further in order to bring our discussions into a new level. One comment from me: I heard all the speeches, and we understand the algorithm and principles, political competitiveness, and privatization, and about anti-monopoly committee. We have a wonderful legislation, but we should think how to force deputies to adopt the decisions, and this is understandable. A comment, some conclusion. We have not what we want, but we have what we have, because we don't go where we want to go, and we go there because we have some illusions. Andriy told us about it, and also other speakers supported this, and we should bust those myths, and the people, they don't understand how things work, and they find the way and they go into the opposite direction. And there was a material about fiscal illusions. People believe that state can provide some money for them, and people think that if someone got rich, it is at the expense of the people, and there can't be any honest business, and if it is impossible, so there's no honest business, they believe. And we should fight against those illusions. Thank you, and our discussion is over.